Hello friends, Adam here with FED. Today we're going to be talking about ranking systems in Fire Emblem. And when I say ranking systems, I am specifically referring to getting a ranking to measure how well you played the game at the end. Usually comes in the letter ranking between E and A, sometimes S sometimes S in certain games. If you get like a high enough ranking, it goes like, oh, you're so amazing, here's an S rank for getting A and everything else. It usually measures things like turns you took, how many level ups you got in your playthrough, and things like that. But we're going to talk about all the different ranking systems in the series, some in more depth than others. There are some that I think are more interesting, so we'll spend more time on those. But ultimately, I want to talk about them and then talk about whether or not a ranking system should be included in the next Fire Emblem game if we want to see it return. And then beyond that, how it should be implemented. So, let's get to it. FE1 through FE3 do not have a ranking system, but our first game that does have it is Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, the fourth entry in the series. You can receive an E through A rank in 4 different categories, and if you get A in all of those categories, I believe it gives you like an S rank, or maybe it just gives you an A rank anyways. But the goal is to get an A rank in all of them to get the best rank you can possibly get. So the first thing it ranks are tactics, and by tactics it really just is, it counts your turns. And if you complete the entire game in 399 turns or less, you get the A rank in that category. And 399 sounds kind of like a lot. I mean, it sounds, I don't know, it might sound like a lot, might sound like not enough to some players, depends on how you play the game. But that's really only 33 turns per chapter. And when you consider you have some chapters that are honestly pretty quick, like the prologue and chapter 3, that you are able to spend a little more time on, like chapter 2 is a long one, or chapter 4, chapter 5 can be kind of long as well if you're playing slowly. So overall, I think the tactics ranking is pretty forgiving in FE4. Next is experience. And the game, to get the highest ranking experience, requires you to get 1,000 level ups, which means taking in base level into account, the average level of all your units throughout the entire game needs to be about 26. It's between 25 and 26, I believe. So you want about level 26 on all your units to guarantee that A rank. But you could have, you have some units reach level 30, some units, reach, level 20, level 21, 22, and it'll all even out. But you just need to make sure to get 1,000 level ups throughout your playthrough. Which sounds like a lot, but it makes you play the game in a different way than you would normally, which I think is kind of fun. It makes it so you really need to spread your resources, spread the Paragon Ring around, make sure you staff abuse with all your staffers, and every ounce of combat experience that you can give to a unit that can't use a staff is that's how you optimize it, right? So a unit like Levin, once he promotes, I guess I should say Lewin, once he promotes and gets access to staffs, he should not be getting any combat experience really, which is sad because that's like his thing, with his super Omega weapon Holseti. But you should really not be doing that to get the best rank. I think that's really an interesting thing. It changes the way you play. The next rank is survival, and this is a simple one. Just all units must be alive and recruited, except for one of the Axe Bros. Obviously, you can only recruit one of Johann or Yohava, so you just pick the one, and then the other one doesn't matter. But yeah, you do have to recruit everyone. That doesn't include annoying units to recruit, like Hannibal. Have to recruit them. And finally, they have combat as a ranking. And combat, this one's a little more convoluted than the other one's, not as straightforward. So I wrote it down just to make sure I could explain it the way I want to. But essentially, when a unit dies in battle, that loss is saved permanently to your save file. So even if you reset and go to the save that was at the start of that turn, that loss will still be remembered by that save file. The only way to really get rid of the loss is to start the chapter over from the start. And if you have more than 3 losses on a save file, you cannot get the A rank. So you have to have 3 or less losses. So that doesn't mean dead units, that just means they died in battle and you had to reset to get them back. So you need full survival, which you can use the Valkyrie staff to bring units back to life, but on top of that, you just can't lose battles. And if you do, you need to reset. It's a it's a pretty brutal requirement, all things considered, especially once you get to the end game and there's some actual scary enemies. In the early game, it's not too bad, but late game, that can be pretty daunting, honestly. So yeah, and if you get A rank in all of those, you can get I think you get S overall, you get A overall. I don't really remember for FE4, but that's just how those are all the numbers and how it works out. I actually quite like that one. I think that is one of the more interesting, and I think that might be my favorite ranking system in all of Fire Emblem. But next, let's move on to FE5. FE5 has a 179 turn requirement to get the highest ranking in the game. So to get the highest ranking, you have to have 179 turns or less, and you have to have full recruitment with no dead units. But that is a little misleading as well, because there's units that aren't that literally just can't recruit. Units like Olwen and Ilios, you can only have one of them on your team. Like, it's literally impossible to have both. Sias and Zed, Amalda, Economor, and then just like the route split exclusives. I think it comes down to you need to have, is it 46? It's 46 or 47 total characters. Essentially, you just need to be able to have the fullest roster you possibly can on your playthrough to get the highest rank. So it's actually interesting the way they do this, though. If you lose a unit along the way, if you just lose one unit, or essentially if you don't have the full recruitment, your rank is automatically lowered by 1. So if you get the triple S from 179 turns, but you lost a unit or didn't recruit a unit, it automatically goes to double S instead of triple S, which I think is a fair punishment. And it just really rewards those who really want to go out of their way. 170 turns sounds pretty strict, and it kind of is. It's about 5 to 6 turns per chapter, but this is really misleading when you think about it. Since, like a defend chapter, like it was to chapter 14, where you're forced to take a certain amount of turns. That's more than 5 or 6 turns. But then once you get access to warp and you use that smartly, you're gonna be able to clear a lot of Seas maps in 1 or 2 turns, and just totally obliterate chapters, and really average out your turn count to be between that 5 and 6, like 5.5 per chapter point that you really want. So it really encourages you to play quickly, and I think this is like an okay ranking system. I think it really benefits and is interesting to like LTC type players, and I think that's fine. But I do feel like it's missing something, and it doesn't. It just covers one aspect of Fire Emblem that is very niche, being that LTC group, but where FE4 kind of acknowledges a wider expanse, a bigger audience of people who'd be interested in playing through the game in a ranked setting. I think, at least. It does. I don't know. FE5 is it's elegant in its simplicity, but FE4's is just there's just more to it, I guess. Now that brings us to Fire Emblem, Binding Blade, and Blazing Sword, or Blazing Blade, whatever you want to call it anymore. The name changes, I swear, all the time, and people get mad when you say one way or the other. Anyways, FE6 and FE7. Their rank systems are basically the same to my understanding. The numbers are different, but that's not what's important here. I just want, there's a tactics ranking, which is just turns. Survival ranking, you're not allowed to, no one can die. Experience ranking, power level, which has to do with how many level ups and the total level of your army. And funds is another interesting one, which is just your total gold plus half the worth of all your items in your inventories and your convoy. Which I think funds tends to be one of the more difficult ones to get in that playthrough, just because funds is because you want to use your really powerful items, but the best way to have high funds is to not use your powerful weapons and stat boosters and stuff, because it makes it a lot easier to meet that funds rank, because those are worth a lot of money, right? But I think the most interesting one that FE6 introduced is combat. The combat ranking is that the game keeps track of your win percentage in battles. So yeah, losses, sure, that's a thing. But what it's really interesting is that you need to KO the enemy in 40% of the battles you engage in, whether on player or enemy phase. So 40% of the time, so it's under half the time. You think it would be pretty easy, and it probably is. I've never actually gone for rank in FE6 or FE7, but 40% of the time you need to KO the enemy. You have to knock them out, you have to kill the enemy in that round of combat, which, now that I think about it, shouldn't be too difficult. But I think that is a really interesting concept, and I would like to see that even like a little higher for the highest rank possible. Maybe make it 60%, and then you're really working for it. I think that'd be really cool. And finally, the last ranking system we see, the last rank we see in Fire Emblem is FE12, which is really disappointing because I think I just wish we would have seen more of it, because I like having ranks at the end of my games. I guess it gives replay value. FE12, for whatever reason, the Serenus Forest page doesn't really talk about the rankings very much at all, that I could see. Someone please link it in the comments if I'm just dumb and missed it. Or just a good post explaining it, or a good video explaining it, just something. Just link me to something so I can learn more about it. But my quick internet searching, I couldn't find any answers to really what the FE12 ranking system was like. I know it has to do with survival and turns, and it probably has something to do with level ups and stuff, but I don't know exactly how it works. So please hit me up on that. Anyways, should rankings come back in future Fire Emblem games? Yes. I 100% think they should. I don't see any reason they shouldn't. Casual players, people who don't want the rankings or whatever, can just totally ignore them. Just totally ignore them. You don't have to care. But it gives someone like, well, I don't know, a lot of us are probably watching this video who are more hardcore into the series, another interesting way to play the game. So yes, rankings should return. I see no reason why they shouldn't, as long as they make sense. You know, FE7 is notorious for having like one of the worst ranking systems ever. Just because the rankings at the end are so it almost feels arbitrary, and Hector mode is all screwed up because there's guidance chapters that they have like 0 turns assigned to them. So you essentially, no matter what, you're losing turns there. It's a whole cluster of crap, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. But I think a good ranking system can make another playthrough of the game very, very interesting. So how should they come back is the next question, right? How should they come back? And I think an implementation similar to FE4 is the best way to go about it. I think if you want something more simple, FE5, but FE4, I love having, yes, you need to play the game relatively quickly for tactics, but not as quick as possible, because we still need you to get, this many level ups, and you need to, you can't lose any units. It really rewards a different style of play than, say, FE5, which basically just says, play this game as quickly as possible, and you'll get the highest rank. I think that's really interesting, and that's what I would like to see in future entries in the series. Like, you just picture 3 houses with that, and I think it would have been a lot more interesting to play through the game again, because, I don't know, 3 houses has a lot of replay issues as it is, just because playing through 3 houses requires you to play, the same, 12 chapters before you even get to part 2, and then in part 2, it's a bunch of shared chapters. It's a whole cluster of just annoying replayability. Like, it's there, the replayability is there, but it's just like kind of annoying. It would just be another thing to make it a little more interesting to play through again. But I would love to see a ranking system just in the next game. And who knows, maybe we're getting an FE4 remake next or soon, and then we'll have that ranking system there, and I would love that, and I'll play the crap out of it, and we'll try to S rank it, all that good stuff. It'll be fun. But yeah, I think that'll do it for today. Let me know in the comments what you think about ranking systems in Fire Emblem. Which one's your favorite? Do you think they should come back? Do you think it adds anything to the game, or do you think it takes away from the game? And of course, like the video before you leave. I'd really appreciate it. And subscribe to the channel. Just click the little red button down there, and then you hit that little bell or whatever that people say to hit. And if you hit that, then your phone will just tell you when there's a new video from FED. You can't miss those. And of course, if you miss that, if you don't hit the bell, you'll miss the streams and everything. It's a whole thing. You don't want to miss it. So please subscribe. It means a lot to the channel. And like the video before you leave too. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.